This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
This is the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. Today is Thursday, May 1st, and it is 6:03 p.m.
Can we take notes?
You can.
Okay.
I usually write things down, but I don't always remember them very well because.
Because the Gemini is taking notes.
Oh, yeah.
Do we want that to be happening? I did not ask it to do that. Stop taking notes. Yeah, at work we've banned Otter AI. Every time it shows up in a Teams meeting, we reject it. Our IT department's really fired up about it. Okay, welcome everybody. So now that we do have a quorum, Jackie sent the March meeting notes yesterday, maybe. Does anybody have any edits or comments or a motion to approve them?
I would move to approve.
I will second.
I don't think I was there, but so I guess abstain.
Okay.
According to the notes, you weren't there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I did realize in the notes, it said that I was going to invite Councilor Denham to this meeting, and I did not because when I looked at my notes, I thought we waffled about that. So I will do that for next time if we decide we want to do that. That was about the sort of about this short-term rental ordinance that sort of started talking about like an additional housing committee. And I thought we were going to wait. Anyway, I will do that for next time if people want us to do that, but we can talk about that when we get to the short-term rental ordinance topic. Okay. I thought it would be helpful for Ben, Kayam, and I to give an update on what's been happening at and Allison also at the ordinance subcommittee. We are still meeting, and I think it's been going really well, actually. At least with the ordinance subcommittee. They have been, and Kayam and Ben, feel free to jump in, but they've been very agreeable, I think, to like all of our proposals. There's been questions. We spent some time, we met Monday, right? We spent some time on Monday talking about the merging of the districts into 3, and Councilor Derby is very interested in a wildlife corridor. And so thinking about like a wildlife corridor overlay to make sure that wildlife coming off the mountain can safely pass through the city and like not having zoning, you know, if zoning became more dense, like having that like a barrier to wildlife. So he was gonna work with you, Alice, trying to find a map. There's a map somewhere that he was trying to find.
Yeah, we both are in search of the map, and I think where we left it was not necessarily something that should hold up what you all are doing, but that we would explore kind of moving forward.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Kayam and Ben, do you have anything else to add? I mean, I think it's been going fairly smoothly, actually.
Is there certain areas that they've like been more interested in or added to, or
I think most of the questions, like a lot of the substantive questions have been from Councilor Smith talking specifically about the plains, and like definitely questions. I think a lot of it is coming from like her wanting to be able to explain this to constituents and like feeling like this is potentially a big change, and you know, really thinking through the on the ground consequences of these changes. So like I think one concern was potentially the equity concern of the people who live in smaller homes being the ones that would need to like transition to duplexes. And that might be like really small living quarters for people. Like there was that concern, and like that it would, I guess, further exacerbate some of the like economic stratification.
Can you talk more about why people in smaller homes would have to live in multi? I don't really understand.
I'm not sure that she,
I think it was the allowance of the duplex by right. Her concern was that if that really took off throughout the Plains area of town, the impact would be disproportionate there because it already is pretty dense. So I think she was concerned about that. And the houses themselves are not necessarily built, they don't lend themselves well to duplexes, I think was one of her concerns, and that the modifications people would make potentially would be out of sorts with what's around them. So that was my takeaway from it. I don't want to speak for her, of course, but
Yeah, and there was also concerns about just like the way that the lots are laid out and how there might be an actual, well, and this is a point that Ben brought up, and I don't want to speak for you, but like the fact that there might actually be limited lots that would be a good candidate for any of this anyway, like in terms of frontage and the shape of lots and how a lot of them are like sort of back heavy, or however, like the house is sort of situated towards the front of the lot with a large backyard.
So in terms of where we are in the process, Councilor Denham is going to invite the Aquifer Protection Committee members to come to the next meeting, which I think will be in June. Because we do want to hear from them about the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, and obviously make sure that we're not proposing anything that would, you know, harm the aquifer. I had something else to say about that. Now I don't remember what it was. Oh, there was Councilor Smith was saying that there's like this rumor in the Plains that there's like these lots were built this way on purpose with the big backyards to protect the aquifer, and that's what she's always been told. And so I think we just need to hear from them about what their concerns are. And so that's Councilor Denham's plan. So we have some holds on our calendar for early June to have that next meeting. And then this is where I get confused about the process. It either goes back to council and then over to the planning board, and then at some point there's a joint public hearing between planning and city council, and then discussion at the planning board about some of these things. And they may have, I mean, I would imagine planning board would have more substantive suggestions and questions about some of the like the changes that were proposed to residential zoning table 6.1 or 6-1, as Kyan pointed out, like the numbers that are in here are sort of arbitrary. So they might have a reason why it should be, the frontage should be more than 80 or less than 80 and whatever. So, but I think it's moving. I mean, I think it's going to take a while for us to get anywhere substantive, but it's, I think, been going quite well. So, anything else I missed about the meeting the other night?
I don't think so. Yeah, I feel like all their comments and questions have been really like substantive and good clarifications. I think earlier in the meeting, like earlier in the ordinance committee meetings, we talked a lot about like just like the very detailed like different changes about community character language and like what else did we talk about? Oh yeah, just like removing the references to fair housing, that kind of stuff. And I mean, yeah, this is such an all-encompassing ordinance change. I mean, it touches parking a little bit as well. Oh. Are we addressing the building like unit maximum, like the cap as well? Yeah, so there's so much different stuff. So
yeah, I mean, that kind of like sailed right through.
Yeah.
Ordinance subcommittee. I imagine that will not sail through when we get to planning and city council. The idea that we're removing the cap of 18 units per building. I mean, they were like, oh, that makes sense. Okay. But I suspect we will hear more feedback from that as we get further along. But yeah, so it's been fine. We've had a couple community members come and give public comment, but it's similar stuff that we usually hear. So
Positive and negative, though.
yes, we've heard, actually, yes, we have it. There's been some positive comments too. So that's also always nice. Right. Great. So we'll keep you updated. Again, the next meeting's not till June, so we probably won't have another update until the end of our June meeting. All right, short-term rental ordinance. I added this at the request of Lindsay.
Yes. Has anyone else been paying attention to any of the meetings? Well, we have someone here. I don't
Yeah.
know. But I just feel like our committee should weigh in with any data, if it exists, about how it affects affordable housing, because I feel like a lot, there's this desire to make sure that we are not, that short-term rentals are not, the ordinances that they create are not creating higher rents or other disadvantages to our fair housing goals in the city. So there's like caps being put on and different tools being used, but I feel like they're being used by like their gut, or like it feels good. And I would really love some data. And I don't know if anyone here has data about, because I haven't been able to find data that it actually impacts like rents and
Yeah.
So, and it's gonna get feisty probably when it gets to the full council. And since a lot of the discussion will be about fair housing, I think that our committee would be of service to provide any data that might exist. Regarding.
I have some data.
Oh, you have some data. There you go.
Do we have data about like the prevalence, like how many short-term rentals are already existing?
Yeah, we know how many are existing. It's like 40.
Less than 40.
Less than 40.
Oh.
And just full disclosure, I have a short-term rental, and so a lot of people have been showing up to the meetings who have them, and most of the people that I would say all of the people that have been showing up are residents of Easthampton, and their short-term rental is actually subsidizing and making their home affordable here. It's like a tool for affordability when you live here. To, like in our case, we rent out 2 bedrooms in my mom's house to help pay her mortgage, so she can afford to live in Easthampton. So there's definitely a desire by I think everyone to make sure that the town's not calling for it now. We're not Kate, but like where investors are coming in, just like buying up houses and taking away from the stock for home buyers and raising rents. But that hasn't been the case.
But is that one of the things they're trying to protect?
Protect.
So what's their methodology for protecting that? I don't.
Well, there's some methodology. There's there's some language in there about being you probably have more on being a resident and.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It seems to be
going all over the
map, but there was a cap on the total number of units. There's been talk about in some ways restricting like how many you could have.
Oh, yeah, how many and then somebody could have. So
and where they could be, like if they're not on your property, if that's a separate kind of limiting category.
Yeah, one of the limitations was you could have one on your own property, one somewhere else. That was one of the limitations. And overall caps in the city.
Corporations.
Not corporations can't
banned
are banned.
having them.
Oh, okay.
Oh, also the number of nights per year has been another.
Could someone just explain to me, I think this is Yoshi, by the way. I don't understand how it is that short-term rentals make housing more affordable than just a regular rental, like renting it out for 6 months or a year.
I don't know.
I didn't get that.
Yeah, can you say it again? You were breaking up a little bit.
I think I just don't understand the affordability tool argument and how a short-term rental would make your home ownership more affordable if you could also just long-term rent it. Like, I don't understand the difference between it.
Well, I can explain. So for a lot of people's I'll just my situation, John could tell his situation, but like mine, we rent bedrooms in my mom's house. So we're not gonna long-term rental bedrooms in my mother's home. Like it's not a two-family, it's a single family home. And we don't all the time. And I could not find my mom a home to purchase in Easthampton without coming up with a strategic way to help supplement her mortgage.
Okay,
So
thanks. That's helpful.
And then other people have similar situations where like their in-laws, their family members come part of the year, like a grandparent and lives and helps part of the year. And this subsidizes them being able to afford that convenience or luxury or whatever you want to say to have their family visit. They wouldn't rent it out otherwise, but it would be a strain financially on their family. So like I don't think it's like anyone's getting rich, put it that way. But
And I would also add, like, I'm not speaking for the Donahue Institute, but I would say in my job, we study short-term rentals in a couple different projects. And like, I would say the research is not necessarily conclusive on the relationship between short-term rentals and rental affordability, especially in communities that aren't like seasonal like ours. So, and I mean, I don't know if Ben or Allison or anyone else has information or data that contradicts that, but that's sort of my understanding. And like, I think from that perspective, that's sort of partially why I've been not super involved in that conversation or wanting to get involved in that conversation. From an ideological standpoint, I do think making restrictions for corporations and outside LLCs makes a lot of sense. Just like from my own like political and economic point of view. So I'll just put that out there. But like from what I understand, there isn't a strong correlation between STRs and affordability as we know it right now.
Okay, it's helpful to have that context. I think when I was working in homelessness, it was really difficult when it's not like what we're describing where you have a room in your house and you're renting it out like an Airbnb or whatever, like, but when full units are being removed from the market for whatever reason, whether it's to build shelter units or to, you know, make them short-term rentals, it just became really difficult to place people, particularly low-income people who might have restrictions around how long the lease needs to be in order for them to receive tenant-based rental assistance. Like, it was really tricky. And so I really would need to know more about the issue myself to better understand it.
Is that one of the things they're taking into consideration is whether the entire unit is being rented out versus like, you know, the garage or the basements are tricky, but like some portion of the house? Is that been
no, really, it's more just about like limiting, like you can only have one of the limitations that is proposed is you can only have one beyond your property. So like some people have the house next door because like I know one family bought it because they're anticipating their parents moving there in a year and it came up for sale and it has a first floor bedroom. So and they're living in it while they renovate their house and then when their family moves here in the future. So it's a way of so they're trying to limit it to just, you can just have one other. So you're not just like, that's your business, I guess.
But in your mom's case, that counts as two?
No, it counts as one. It's in her house.
It's in her house.
We don't rent them separately. Like one family would rent 2 bedrooms.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
The way it's written right now, it doesn't differentiate between like people in your residential dwelling unit versus in a ADU or a freestanding single family home. That's not accounted for in the ordinance.
So I guess what the question is like, because I kind of agree with Yoshi, like in some ways if they're taking, because it feels like the concern, right, is taking units offline. So if you have a 3-family property and you've decided instead of renting it, you're going to Airbnb it all year, right? That's taking 3 units out of our year-round housing stock.
Sure.
That feels really different than like, I have an ADU on my property and I Airbnb at 6 months out of the year, or in the other 6 months of the year, my mother lives there in the winter. You know, that,
Yeah.
to me, that feels like
Mhm.
that's not necessarily taking housing stock off the market. Or, I don't know.
Right, it's using housing stock more flexibly so you can accommodate maybe different living situations. I also worry about like tenancy protections, and I don't know what the tenancy protections are for short-term rentals versus like a long-term tenant with a written lease. So like I say, I know very little about this topic. I would have to learn a lot more, and I'm less concerned in Easthampton if it's only like 40 units versus like, when you're going into a bigger city and a significant portion of the city is now being rented as an Airbnb versus a long-term rental. But so I want to learn more about it is all I'm saying. I think it's an interesting question, one I know nothing about.
Yeah, and I think for context, we have about 8,000 housing units in the city,
Oh,
something
okay.
like that.
Do you want to add?
Yeah, I think I misunderstood you at the beginning about maybe I declined my option to public speak,
Oh,
but
it's fine. We're not a very formal.
okay,
So.
well, I didn't want to jump in, but
It's fine.
I would like to speak.
Yeah,
if
go ahead. That's fine.
So I just noticed that this meeting was happening, and I am concerned about affordable housing and access to housing. I'm also very concerned about the STR ordinance because I have a short-term rental at my property. And as it's Lindsay, right?
Mhm.
As Lindsay alluded, I think there's been a lot of emotion that's come up in some of the meetings. And for me, I like to just like get into the facts and the perspective. And so I have like a lot of information that I'd be happy to share with your committee if you want to educate yourselves. But just briefly, I think I was just going to say the point, we have about 8,000 units. We have less than 40 STRs. That's less than half of 1%. But another way to look at it, which a lot of academics do, is say how many listings per 1,000 inhabitants. And just to give perspective, we have less than 2.5 short-term rentals per 1,000 residents, whereas a place like Hawaii has 22, Austin, Texas has 15, San Francisco has 8, and New York City has 5. Okay. So we're like very low on the concentration level. And if you just look at the perspective of, housing costs, how they've risen over the past 5 years, we've had, depending on how you look at it, like 40 to 50% rise in home prices in Hampshire County, which is mostly the same as Easthampton. That didn't come from, nor will it be solved by 40 STRs. And I'd say half of those short-term rentals, if not more, are what I would term like casual. Mm-hmm. They're people who it's incidental to their life and they would not add a unit. And just, there was somebody that brought up in the last meeting a study, if you want to look it up, by Purdue University. There's actually a couple studies that were done at Purdue University about this question. The woman in the meeting brought it up to say that short-term rentals raise rents. But I actually went and read the study, which she clearly did not. And what it says is that they have a very small impact on rents, but only in places where there's an extreme concentration of them, which is tourist hotspots. And that's because the incentives are so great that they generate a fury of buying. And this happened in San Francisco. The study actually talks about what happened in San Francisco over 10 years ago, where there were like thousands and thousands and thousands of Airbnbs that were pretty much unregulated. And Airbnb actually instituted its own restriction saying you can only have one host, one listing. And the study was basically observing what happened after Airbnb self-regulated. And so this out of control situation was tamped down by the one host, one listing regulation. And so it naturally created a drop in rents. But this was in an extreme case. So I think there's a lot of emotion about these things that is just not applicable where we live. And I was glad to hear somebody on the call mention that, our case is different than a lot of other places. And the other thing that I wanted to just highlight, I don't know I thought that maybe you guys were interacting already with the short-term ordinance, but in case you do, I just want to point out about the ADU thing. You know, there was some sentiment in some circles that the ADUs were somehow off limits because they were supposed to be created for affordable housing. I have an ADU that I built last year, and for one, I can tell you that there's no way that ADUs will become a significant source of affordable housing in Easthampton because they are so expensive to build. It will not happen. And I built mine so that because my family was growing and I can't afford to move. I just have a new kid now, so we have 2 kids. We can't afford to move. We have family that lives far away, so we built the ADU so that the grandparents could come spend a lot of time with us. Multi-generational living, like our family well-being, but we don't use it all the time, so we short-term rental it, and we probably rent less than half the nights in an average month. And I also have a lot of data that I've compiled showing that there's really not an investment incentive in Easthampton for people to just go nuts on short-term rentals. So I've compiled information on home prices combined with things like mortgage rates and the average income you can get. And I've played out a lot of scenarios like, what if you have a duplex and you rent both of them? Or if you have a duplex and you do one long-term and one short-term, or a short-term or a single family rental. So I'm happy to share that with all of you. I do think it's important to get data out there. And I do think nobody in Easthampton is like the short-term rentals we're providing are for people that are coming to work and see their family. There's not like a steady stream of 7-day-a-week tourist rentals. Just my last point, because I started talking about the ADUs, was that when I've heard the sentiment against the ADU short-term rentals, I've had to point out that the ADUs are actually the only form of short-term rentals in the town that are not taking away something, except for the bedroom rentals. Because if you're doing an Airbnb in one side of your duplex, you're taking a ready-to-go long-term rental. If you do it in a single-family home, you're taking away a ready-to-go long-term rental. But I built something from scratch, so the worst net effect is 0. In terms, I built something and then I short-term rental it. In a few years when I can afford to, I will move, and now there will be a brand new, beautiful unit that can be rented. So if we want homeowners to build ADUs, we need to give them every incentive to do so, which means let them do whatever they want with it, because that's the only way it'll get built, because it's not a financial, boon to build an ADU. It's horribly expensive. So that's all. Thanks for listening.
Can I have your name just for the record?
Oh yeah, John Santiago, 13 Oliver Street.
Thank you. That's helpful. So where is it in the process now? Is it going back to council?
It's still in the ordinance. Okay. The last meeting, I think, got bogged down. There's a whole other sprinkler gate that's going on that has nothing to do with this. So that kind of thing, I went into that conversation with conflicting like building code with fire code.
Related to short-term rentals?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. So
whether or not they need sprinklers?
Yeah.
Okay.
So so it's still in the ordinance.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if we want to say anything or nothing, but I just felt like it should be on our radar since it's going to be going to and a lot of people are going to be, maybe, we always think, people from the public are going to be showing up. And it seems to draw people from the public that are, either concerned with fair housing, rightly so, but maybe aren't equipped with the data, or people who don't like strangers in their neighborhood.
Yeah. So, I had heard the number, I don't remember who said this number, maybe it's the mayor, that there were 80 short-term rentals?
No, there's not.
Okay.
No, the building commissioner found 40 something on like just his search.
Just like his search of like.
No, we're all registered with the state.
Oh.
You have to register with this. I mean, there might be people doing it renegade, but
I think that's what he was accounting for. But the Department of Revenue tracks it.
Technically, if you're following by the rules, which people showing up at all the meetings are, you have to register with the Department of Revenue, and the short-term rental owners have been paying the city taxes since like 2019.
You actually can't even start an Airbnb
Yeah,
account because
Unless
they
you,
won't let you open it without your mass number.
Oh, okay.
So that number, according to the Department of Revenue, is that there's 37. But there could be, you know, people on Craigslist
Right, like
or
rogue. Yeah.
I don't know where.
he
those-
also might not have accounted for, like, I list mine twice, so if someone wants to run a 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom, but it's the same thing. So he might be also just counting listings when often people cross lists.
Well, what do folks think about, I mean, is this, should we weigh in some way? Should we, it's like, what's the pulse of folks?
What's a timeline for weighing in? I mean, I feel like there's a lot of on-ramp learning more about the topic. Because, I mean, I'm just saying, I lived in an amazing bedroom in a person's house, like a mudroom in a person's house for $650 a month. And as soon as I moved out as a tenant, she took on Airbnb for $850 a month. And that took a great unit off the market where I was living. So I don't disagree that it can be a great tool for affordability for a lot of families, but I feel strongly about keeping as many units on the market as possible. And I have lived in an ADU apartment as a rental, as a tenant, and it was amazing. So I don't know. I feel strongly about this particular topic, but I do want to do research because I feel like there's a lot I don't know, and I wouldn't want to like take any action without doing more sort of background.
I'll also add to, like, restrictions aren't the only tool in our toolbox for this. Like, communities have employed like incentives for people who have ADUs or who have rental units to rent to year-round tenants in situations like ours if we have really low inventory. So that's also something that we could think of for more longer-term advocacy. And then I'll also just repeat what I said earlier. Like, I'm definitely a fan of restricting LLCs and corporations, especially ones that aren't registered in Easthampton. So, yeah.
I just want to clarify one point. Right now, it's only corporations that are prohibited. LLCs are limited liability companies. They are allowed right now, the way it's written.
But like learning more about what you're saying, like alternatives would be really interesting. But I don't know if we have time to do that in order to make any kind of statement.
Well, so it would go back, when it goes back to council, will there be a public hearing?
Yeah.
And we don't, at this point, have a plan of when that's going back to
No,
council.
so there's time.
It's in the same kind of limbo as
This.
And even if like as a committee, we choose to weigh in or not proactively, we might be asked. So we should at least
Yeah.
be prepared for that.
I mean, I think, John, if you have data that you'd like to forward, I mean, I think especially like that Purdue study and stuff, I think that would be helpful for some of us who don't know as much about it.
I'd be happy to.
And
Is there a specific
person, you could forward it to me.
point person there?
If I have any things with my name on it anywhere in here. Oh, here. For all other people's business first.
I was going to say, I'm on the website.
That's true. You can
Easy
also
enough
send it to
say.
Allison. This is my work business card, but I'll put my personal email on the back. There you go. That would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we could think about it more and like do some more research. I do agree, Lindsay, that we might get asked to.
That's what I was thinking. I didn't want to be like, huh?
If we think that if council or anyone else is interested in hearing what we might think, or if we have, think that it might affect affordability. I mean, I think, I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's a great case from what you both have shared. I mean, we're not the Cape, right? So, I mean,
I really like the idea that kind of said, about incentivizing. And I feel like that when we want certain outcomes, I think it's nice to look at it that way instead of like restricting things.
Kyle, do you have examples of incentives that other communities have used?
I mean, I know that Provincetown implemented one. I mean, their case is definitely much different from ours. Like they have, I think, as many seasonal housing units as permanent housing units. Like it's very different. But yeah, they did that, and I'm pretty sure it's been successful. Like I think they've upped the incentive once.
I mean, I think, Lindsay, to your earlier point there, and John, to yours too, but like there is, there's an affordability to the homeowner, right, to stay in their property. And there's been a lot of discussion about seniors who want to stay in their homes.
Yeah, I actually counsel, I'm, a realtor as well, and I counseled a woman who didn't want to live in her house anymore, and she had enough property for an ADU, and so she was really looking into it as an option. I said, maybe, I wasn't for like, it was more for an ADU, but like, sorry, I'm getting conflated with the ADU conversation because there's a lot of ADU conversations, but I was saying like she could build an ADU and then rent out her house and stay on her property, but that's more of an ADU discussion. But it is just, there's just a lot of tools when you're trying to figure out affordability, and the growing number of short-term rental owners is women in their 60s who are using it to help subsidize their living, especially in communities like this. It's not, corporate or it wouldn't be a great, like as John mentioned, it would be a great business plan here. Like you just wouldn't have that kind of margin.
How many Williston parents could possibly stay in here?
And we are providing services because most of the guests are visiting family in Easthampton.
Yeah.
Or Williston or something.
Yeah. All right. Well, does that sound good to folks? So we get a little bit more data and revisit this? Decide if we want to weigh in after we've all had a chance to think about it more?
Yes, I would like to get not just on the impact on affordable rents, but also around like tenancy access, tenancy rights, protections for people, because even if it's creating more affordability for homeowners, like the tenants who would be the people who are going to Airbnb don't have protections that tenants do. And I want to understand that side of it too, not just the affordable, but also the fair side.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Shira is here. Are we ready to move on? So Jackie was asking me about our conversation about Counselor Denham, and I was saying that I forgot to invite her to this meeting. But then, I don't know, Jackie, do you want to say anything about that? Are you still here?
I think we should wait until, so from our last meeting, the conversation was that the city council might put together a subcommittee to look at this ordinance, and they wanted to potentially invite a member of this committee to join that. Or, well, Kayam, you remember this.
It was around, it wasn't around any of the ordinance stuff. It was around the rent control, potential rent control.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. My bad.
And then didn't we say, can't we just be that committee? Like, do they need
We did, and then my notes were not clear of whether we were going to just kind of wait and see what happened, or if we were going to invite Counselor Denham to talk to us about it now. So what do folks want to do?
I had asked her to join this meeting, but she's actually still at work. I know, because when I left, she was still there.
Okay.
So I think we can talk about it. We're meeting again at the end of the month, right?
Yeah, we do have another meeting scheduled at the end of May.
Okay.
So should we invite her for that meeting?
Sure.
Okay. It's May 29th, I think. 1, 2, 3. No, 22nd. Okay. All right. I'm making a note. Definitively decided that. Okay. Okay, so the last thing on our agenda for tonight is to talk about our housing production plan, which is unfortunately expiring again. And it's expiring when? I wrote this down. 2026. Do we know when in 2026? Is it like the end of the year?
March 16th.
So, okay, like like less than a year. Right, and so we talked about this briefly last time, and then we promised it till tonight. I'm looking back at my notes. Are we doing an update to the master plan?
Yeah, so one of the options, I think Jackie was the one who suggested it, was a great idea, is to sort of add it into the master plan update.
Yeah.
Which we will ideally have funding for. And that will just sort of streamline the process a bit. It's an option. There's other ways to go about it too, of course.
And did we apply for money for the update of the master plan, or is it CPA money?
No, so it's not CPA money. The application is due in June.
Okay.
First week of June, and then we wouldn't hear until probably the fall. So there might be a little bit of a period where there's a lapse.
Yeah. Okay.
If we go that route. I think CPA funded it the last time, and they obviously could do that again if we put in the request.
Okay. What do folks think?
I was just wanted to ask a question, perhaps of Allison. I was just wondering the implications of having an expired housing production plan. I know there's some like grants and other things that count on having a plan in place.
There aren't a lot of grants related
Okay.
to it. The primary impetus for a lot of communities is that it's one of the requirements for a safe harbor from 40B applications, comprehensive permit applications. I don't think that's a concern here. At least not in this group. But yeah, it's not, we're not eligible for a lot of the housing related grants because we don't have the actual production to back it up. Like they look at the actual numbers of new housing units being created in order to be eligible for some of that stuff. And we never make the cut. So I don't think it would be a huge impact to us in any financial context.
And I would guess that we've had lapses in the past between when, because it takes a while. And I mean, I think if we could piggyback it onto the update, which is the master plan, that would make the most sense. I don't know if there's pieces of the master plan, like if there are additional pieces in the housing production. I mean, the housing production plan is like a specific thing.
It is, yeah. I mean, there's regulatory requirements, what has to be included in it, I think. But in talking with Ken Comia from the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, he's helping me draft the RFP that will go out for the master plan. And he seemed to think that we could roll in some of these regulatory plans, like the open space and recreation plan potentially too. And that it's still doable. So I guess like it would become sort of a subset of the master plan.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what it looks like to do that, but I think, like I said, it's been done and is doable. But the CPA route, I would be quicker. If there's dedicated funds just for that.
Yeah, hi, Jackie.
I'm just curious, maybe you already said this and I didn't hear you, Allison, sorry. What's the timeline for the master plan grant?
So the grant gets submitted the first week of June. The state doesn't make announcements till the fall, and then like with contracting and everything,
Okay.
I would kick off till after the first of next year.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems to me like the housing production plan would be like step one. If you're doing a master plan, right, a lot of what's in there in the housing section depends on the research that you're going to do for the housing production plan anyway. Don't you think? So the housing production plan could be the preliminary part, and then the information that comes out of the research done for the housing production plan goes into the master plan anyway. If that makes any sense at all. I'm sick. So
It does.
But are you suggesting like doing it like using CPA money to do it early or
well,
just
I'm saying we still, because I don't know, it's hard to tell with this CPA committee how they would feel about us asking for money for a housing production plan. I don't know if anybody has a take on that, but I think if we can get this grant and it can cover all the things, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Grant that Allison's talking about.
Yeah, so just to be clear, the grant would only cover a portion of the master plan update. The rest of it will have to come from city funds.
CPA or like city general funds?
It's still being worked out. So I don't want to say for sure. I don't know. I just know that the mayor has plans to make sure that it is funded.
So it seems like, so if the grant's gonna fund a portion, it seems like CPA might be a viable option to fund a portion of the housing piece. So we would probably not want to ask twice, like, it feels like we wouldn't want to ask twice.
Yeah, I don't believe the intent was to go to CPA, but I just don't want to say that definitively because then it could end up happening.
Yeah.
There hasn't been any discussion of it yet.
Okay.
I also don't know what the cost would be. I have not done one in quite a few years, so it's hard to.
How much, do you remember how much how much was it we asked for last time? I don't remember. Does anyone remember?
I don't remember, but I'm sure there's a record of it somewhere.
Yes.
Let me look through old email, actually.
I
got her old email.
like the number 10,000 is in my head, but I think
That's not enough.
I don't think that's the right number.
I can file. We have it.
I'm sure it's in there somewhere. Yeah, okay. What do others think? Okay.
I guess just one question I have quickly, just like in terms of the regulatory compliance stuff, like does the housing section of a master plan like meet the requirements of a housing production plan, or like would we make sure that if we incorporate it into the housing, or if we incorporate it into the master plan, we would just have to make sure it like meets the requirements of the production plan, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be approached honestly as a housing production plan and just used not in lieu of, but as the primary housing section of the master plan, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
This is just my own lack of knowledge. Are master plans longer than, like the housing production plan is only, approved for 5 years at a time? Is the idea with the master plan that it's like a 20-year plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there is no defined timeline that you have to do as a city, and it's actually not in Massachusetts. It's not required to have a current master plan, but generally you're looking at 20 years plus.
Okay.
Because it's a very intensive effort, and also it's like the only long range plan that cities do. Everything else is short term.
So it's possible that then there would also be like some additional, like if the housing production plan is for 5 years, the master plan section might have some additional forecasting for.
Yeah, exactly.
additional
And
years.
that's what I was saying. It wouldn't be in lieu of the housing section entirely, but as Jackie was saying, the research that would go into the housing section is the same that goes into the production plan. So they're just not duplicating efforts.
And if it helps, I just found that the last time we asked the CPA for money for housing production was in 2019, and it was $15,000.
So I found the agreement, and there was a $35,000 match within
Oh, okay.
Energy and Environmental Affairs grant. So it was 50.
Okay.
Which is
Wow. Okay.
That makes more sense. Okay.
So I'll add that I think that just the timing makes a ton of sense. Like I think with the state just releasing their Home for Everyone report, and I think with the Western Mass housing study that's coming out soon. And yeah, I also think like in terms of timing, it makes sense to have something that's addressing more of a shorter time frame. Like I think just from a climate perspective, like there's going to be big changes across the state that are going to start to show up, and like it's going to be. I think that how we see the housing needs in Easthampton are going to evolve really quickly. So
Okay, so I'm hearing support for combining it with the work around the master plan. And then historically, you know, the partnership has been like the advisory group to that document. So, you know, we had focus groups with the consultant and, you know, feedback about like the priorities and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, I mean, the master plan overall will have a really extensive public engagement component, and just that segment of the plan would, be a joint effort.
okay. I mean, that sounds good to me and less work for us.
It should be realistically, yeah.
I mean, obviously we'd be available to help, but it's easier than taking on this whole thing by ourselves, right? If it's part of a much bigger project. Okay. All right, so I guess just keep us updated about that. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments about it? Okay. I think that was our whole agenda. I did want to update you all. I don't know, do other people, does anyone have any other updates, any brief things to share? I have one, but does anyone else have anything else?
I have a couple things, like resources that maybe I'll send you links, Jana, that you can send around, or I can just send it to everyone. But MAPC and the Massachusetts Housing Navigator just released this really interesting report on the affordable housing gap in Massachusetts called Data Opens Doors. And it's like this really interesting sort of portal or like web page that has a bunch of graphics and data about, well, I think one of the really cool things is it does a really good job explaining how affordable housing works in Massachusetts and like the difference between fixed below market rate units versus rent set by income units, and like what that actually, like what the breakdown actually looks like in Easthampton or in the state, how many households aren't served by affordable housing. Like it's a very comprehensive report that you can download the full thing too, and it has a lot more description and detail. So I will send Jana the link, and I'll just send everyone the link.
That's great.
Another thing that I'd mention is I went to this panel, virtual panel by the Boston Foundation on appraisal discrimination. And I thought that it was really interesting and not necessarily super applicable in Easthampton, but because I know that we're a very white community and relatively affluent, but they just released, the Attorney General's office just released a consumer guide on appraisal discrimination that I just think is important to put on the radar. It's a really interesting problem that I didn't fully understand the current magnitude of, but it's definitely like the continued vestige of redlining. And I think it's just something that is important to be aware of.
Can you share both of those links?
Will do, yeah.
Yeah, great, thank you. Anybody else have any updates?
Not an update, but I did just send the Data Opens Doors report while Kyan was talking about it.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I just have a little tidbit of information that there is a special permit application before the planning board to convert the existing church parcel on Pleasant Street to residential development, to convert the existing church into 9 apartments and construct 7 additional buildings to provide an additional 33 units. So this is where the church is on Pleasant, Our Lady. So just, I mean, that's just not affordable, just Interesting.
Market rate.
Market rate, 5-star, I think, is the builder.
The plan is to leave the church building itself, but the other buildings would come down.
Okay.
All the daycare buildings.
And they put so then there'd be 9 apartments somehow in the church.
No, I don't know. Unless he might have changed it. I haven't looked it over in detail, but we had talked about it previously. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yes, he was planning on putting units in the church. I'm sorry.
I mean, I'm glad the church isn't coming down because the church is really pretty and that would be. So just it's just interesting because I get my hair done right across the street and she's been asking me about like, what's going on? I heard they sold it. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know. I haven't heard anything. So
Yeah, it's just a lot of us losing childcare. Myself included.
yeah. So what's Roots gonna do? Do you know? Because they were kind of waiting until the other spot was going to be ready. My kids went there when it was Our Lady we went there for, I don't know, 50 years. Yeah, so that's tough because Easthampton does not have a lot of childcare, particularly for infants and toddlers. All right, anything else anybody has? All right, so we are meeting again on May 22nd. So we can invite Counselor Denham to that meeting. We won't have any other updates from the ordinance subcommittee because we're not meeting again with them until June. But we could review some data on the short-term rental ordinance stuff before that. Okay.
One thing I wanted to throw out there, I did make a couple of really small updates to the housing partnership website.
Oh,
and
okay.
I did upload the report, but if you all wanted other changes, let me know.
Okay.
Or if you wanted other documents, things attached, I'm happy to do anything that needs to be done.
Okay, great.
Oh, I saw that, Allison. It looks good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, if we don't have anything else, we can say goodnight. All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second that. Oh, Shira seconded.
All those in favor?
Uh-huh.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.